Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Harborne Islamic Study Circle HISC Seerah session 159. Today, inshallah, a bit more concentration because there aren't any wasps flying around, so we've got rid of the wasp nest, alhamdulillah. But the last session we talked about was the last session we did on the letters the Prophet ﷺ sent to the rulers and some of the lessons we can learn from that. So we talked about the letter that went to the governor of Bahrain, who accepts the conditions, becomes a Muslim and retains ruling according to Islam. A letter to the governor of Yamama, who would only conditionally accept Islam if given a position in government. So the Prophet ﷺ rejected his very kind offer. The king of Damascus reacted quite badly to the Prophet ﷺ's letter. The letter that was sent to the king of Oman was delivered by Amr bin al-As. This is obviously after the conquest, because we'll do inshallah his conversion story, if not this week but next week. There were two brothers, and they finally accepted Islam, and then were retained the right to rule, but by Islam. Then we briefly mentioned Musaylimah al-Kadhab was given a letter to Bani Hanifa. Then he said, I'm only going to become a Muslim if you power share with me. So obviously the Prophet rejected that. But we just conclude with some of the lessons, essentially that Islam is now operating in a new international paradigm. It's got a new foreign policy. It's trying to set some new standards and norms, and it's making a brave statement to all the leaders of the world. No compromising message of Islam. Become a Muslim, obey the rules of Islam, and then we'll take it from there. So there's no compromising the message of Islam, but the way the message was delivered could be tailored to the audience in terms of the importance of proper, well-written communication skills. To be more effective in the dawah, you need to relate to who you're talking to. So, letters that were sent to Christian monarchs or emperors would mention, the Prophet ﷺ would mention the stance of Islam on Isa, if the Prophet ﷺ thought that was an important thing to discuss. But this is, as I say, a challenge to international affairs. It's follow the Prophet ﷺ, hand over rule of creation to the Creator, it's basically saying that the message of Islam is global. It's not a parochial thing that's just amongst the Arabs, societies inside the peninsula. This is actually a global message with a global reach, and it sets the intention that Islam is expansionist. It will grow, it will move into other realms. It's not going to be satisfied with what it has. So it's about an international view of things. And even the modern word international doesn't really make sense, because the nations and nation states, as we conceptualize it, have only been around a few hundred years. But anyway, we'll talk about that some other time. A few other things to talk about. I had thought about doing the conversion of Amr bin al-As and Khalid bin Walid principally, whereas Amr bin al-As's journey starts around the time of the Treaty of Hudaibiyyah. Khalid bin Walid and the others, they convert just before or after the compensatory Umrah, lesser pilgrimage, or around about that time. Other narrators of the Seerah have said, well, actually their conversion comes early on in the 7th year Hijri. But anyway, there's that major thing, and then there's the lesser pilgrimage that we need to talk about. So I just thought I'll do the pilgrimage today's session, and we'll do their conversion and some of the other battles perhaps in the next session. So, and I'll sort of come back onto some of those expeditions later on. So towards the end of the 7th year Hijri, when Dhul Qada was approaching, the Prophet ﷺ sent a message out that those people who'd witnessed Hudaibiyyah, the Hudaibiyyah truce. In particular, they should start to make preparations to perform Umrah, the lesser pilgrimage. And again, this was, as I say, we talked about the conversation the Prophet ﷺ had with Umar as they were coming back, and the Prophet ﷺ says, yeah, you will do Umrah, I saw it in my dream, it is going to happen, but I didn't tell you it was going to happen this year. And so obviously the negotiations were that they would come back 1 year from then, and then obviously a year after Hudaybiyyah they can make their preparations to return. And then the Meccans said that they would empty out the middle of Mecca, and the Prophet ﷺ can come, but without his fighting equipment. So the Prophet ﷺ, a year has gone by. He proceeds. 1400 went for were at the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah, and they received the pleasure of Allah in the Ridwan, the Bayt al-Ridwan. And so here we've got 2,000 men going, so a few extras, but obviously priority was given to those that were Hudaybiyyah, and then with them some women, some children, and they said about 60 camels went for the sacrifice. But the Prophet, not trusting the Quraish because of the long history of animosity, and the fact that they don't stick to the rules as fervently as the Prophet did, the Muslims took their weapons, so they had a fighting force with them, but always with the intention that they would leave the weapons outside Medina, so outside the Haram. They wouldn't enter into the Haram with the weapons, and the Prophet would have a party, about 200 strong sort of squadron, looking after the weapons. So again, it's only 7-8 miles from Mecca, so should anything kick off, they've got ready access to their weapons. So again, Prophet thinking ahead, tying his camel and then putting the trust in Allah, so making the necessary precautions. So the Prophet did that. So some of the scholars call this the Qada Umrah, the make-up Umrah. So they didn't technically do the Umrah that they made the niyyah for at the time of Hudaybiyyah. Nevertheless, they got the reward for that because they couldn't fulfill their niyyah because of external circumstances that Qraish wouldn't let them. So for their intention, technically they got the reward for the Umrah, but obviously they didn't physically perform the Umrah. Much like a lot of people this year, because of the coronavirus, they may have made the intention or put down the deposit or arranged their holidays to go for Hajj, but obviously outside their control, they couldn't actually get to the Haram. But inshallah, they will still get the reward from Allah for that Hajj. So likewise, the Prophet and the Muslims, they're doing their make-up Umrah, their Qada Umrah. And so this is the first time the Prophet physically did Umrah, and obviously the next time he visits Mecca, he visits to conquer it, and then afterwards he does his the final Hajj, farewell Hajj. So here we have the Prophet with 2,000 men plus others and their weapons. And so news reached the Quraish that they're actually leaving Medina. They've got their intel and they're approaching with all their weapons. So 2,000, so they're sort of in a panic. They thought, look, we've been good to our agreement. Why is the Prophet coming with 2,000 men with their weapons and their armor? So they send out a delegation led by Miqras bin Hafs, and we talked about Miqras and some of the negotiations he was involved with in the Treaty of Hudaybiyyah. He was like the first one they sent to stall a bit. But anyway, Miqras came to them and said, "Oh, Muhammad, we've never seen you be treacherous in anything big or small or big. So why have you brought your weapons? And when we've agreed that you would come with no weapons other than your small personal daggers, your small swords, but here you've got your horses, your armors, your arrows, etc. The Prophet then tried to reassure him and said, yeah, we will not enter Mecca except with what we have agreed. And then he gets some reassurance and says, fine, yeah, this is what we know of you. So the Prophet reassured him, we're not here to fight. We're dressed as pilgrims. We're coming for a pilgrimage, and that's the letter of the agreement. We'll stick to that. We're not going to enter Mecca except as we agreed. So we'll just come with our personal daggers in their scabbards. So then he was fine with that, and the Prophet ﷺ, when they got to Mecca, they left the weapons arsenal, the stash, just outside of Mecca. 200 people were guarding that, and obviously they'd do a bit of switcheroo. So when the people who've done the tawaf and done the sa'i, the running between Safa and Marwa, when a group of them had done that, maybe an advanced group, they would then go back and play tag, and then the 200 who had been guarding the weapons, they would come over, and that 200 would be guarding the weapons. So that's essentially what happened. Prophet didn't trust the intentions of the Quraish fully, and obviously that necessary caution, but he fulfilled his agreement and entered with the bare minimum, just in terms of a defensive, your ceremonial daggers essentially. And it said that the Quraish, they'd emptied out the centre of town, as they said they would, and some of the scholars said that there were three different groupings of the Quraish. One lot basically locked themselves inside their house for 3 whole days. They'd got the provisions, they locked themselves in the house, they're not going to leave, and they don't want to interact with the Muslims. Another group, they congregated in their al-Nadwa, which is essentially their ruling council, their parliament, and it's sort of, as a parliament, as a big base, is probably the biggest house in Mecca. Much like you have some arenas or community centres. So a few people just wanted to, rather than being stuck at home, be stuck with other people, and so they felt a sense of support by being in that in the Dar al-Nadwa. So they were catered for there should anything kick off. And then the final group, and some say a larger group, had left Mecca completely and camped on the valleys outside on the hills for 3 days. So they were there, and all of them just seeing what was going on. None of them wanted to, obviously for political reasons as well as all the propaganda that's still going on. They just didn't want to interact with the Muslims. But that was the agreement, that they would vacate the centre of Mecca so the Prophet could do his tawaf. And again, propaganda's in full flow. So the Quraish, they're doing what they can. They're spreading their rumours amongst themselves, saying, "Look at these Muslims, been away for so long." The only times they've interacted with them essentially is on the battlefield, and so the higher ups, the elite know about the Muslims, but they need to convince their own populations that these Muslims are bad and evil and wayward, fundamentalist, extremist, whatever. And so one of the rumours they start to spread is, look, these guys, they're weaklings. They've been plagued by the illnesses that Medina had been known for, and they're going to come back really squally, and you don't want to become Muslims because you'll end up like that type of thing. So using those that propaganda tool. And again, we know that initially that was the case. In terms of the illnesses, that Abu Bakr and Bilal, they fell sick, and they wrote poems about yearning for for Mecca, and the Prophet made a special dua to take all the sickness out of Medina and put it in one of the arid areas outside of Medina. And after that, the Muslims felt, their health improved. Because they've grown up, always in Mecca, in that environment, and now they're in a completely different city with a different ecosystem and climate. But anyway, when the Prophet ﷺ heard that these rumours are being spread, again, this is the latest propaganda. What else can they say about them, except that they're just going to be, that the Muslims are weak and feeble. So the Prophet ﷺ, he then, commanded the Muslims before they entered that they need to raise their voices, right? Do the talbiyah loud, labayk Allahumma labayk, and they need to be really loud and proud about it. So show that they're not weak, they're not feeble, and again, this is part of the propaganda war between the two sides. You've got the propaganda against the Prophet ﷺ, so the Prophet ﷺ is trying to counter that and say, fine, okay, if that's what they're saying, let's do this. And again, raise your voices when you do the talbiyah, labayk Allahumma labayk, and also to show that because they'll be in ihram, to show, and the two pieces of white cloth for the first time you do tawaf, you expose your right shoulder. So you put the sheet under your arm, and you expose your right shoulder again. So it's just trying to show off that, look, there is meat on the bones. And again, we maintain that part of the ritual. And then the other important one is when they do tawaf, for the first three sides of going around the Kaaba, they should do a really brisk walk, almost running, but a very brisk walk, and it's called ramal, like a march. So they should, be strong and march and march around the three sides, and then the fourth side they can take a bit of rest and walk a bit more casually until they get to the corner, and then they walk fast again. And it said that the reason for that is because most of the Quraish were living, and certainly where they were camped on the hillside, it was facing those three sides. So the audience was looking at how they're doing tawaf. And the fourth side was mainly shielded from their vision, where the majority of the Quraish were, the hills, the Nadwa, etc. So they would march around the three sides really quickly, and then the four sides take a bit of a breather, walk a bit slowly, and then march again. And then so again, this is like, again, it's sort of propaganda. It's showing that we aren't weak, that we are strong. So again, for the first three rounds, they were encouraged, this is what you do. And then obviously when the Quraish saw that, they said, hey, we were fed all these lies, and there's nothing wrong with them, look at them, right? And again, the spectacle would have been extremely unnerving for a lot of the Quraish, but an eye-opening as well, right? So there's nothing wrong with them, but also they would have been in awe. I mean, this is the first time in history that you've got so many Muslims gathered in Mecca, 2,000 Muslims around the Kaaba. They're all dressed in, as pilgrims, and they're all walking in unison, marching all the way around, shouting loudly the talbiyah, and it's a different talbiyah. They're not used to this talbiyah. And again, this, and again, when you do the talbiyah, if you're fortunate to be invited, there is a hypnotic charm to it. And again, people do it in unison, and it amplifies. And especially if you think back in Mecca, you may have had a sort of amphitheater effect where you get an amplification of the chanting, and again it would have reverberated through all the houses into the valleys, and being really hypnotic, and it did psychologically impact upon the Quraish in many ways. And they, for the majority of the population, they could see, well, this is the beginning of the end. And you got some of the leaders of the Quraish finally acknowledging when they saw this, right, that actually this is the beginning of the end for the Quraish, right? That Islam is now on the ascendancy. They came to that conclusion. And there's nothing wrong with these outward displays of religiosity for if they fulfill that purpose of countering the propaganda. Because we saw that when Abu Dujana, he was in the Battle of Badr, he put his red turban on, again, to intimidate the enemy before the duel, and then he's strutting around, swinging his sword on the front line in a really arrogant strut, as some of you brave knights might do. And the Rasul did comment at the time that type of arrogant, swagger is despised by Allah, except at such a time and place on the battlefield where its intention is to intimidate the enemy. The year before in the Treaty of Hudaibiyyah, when the Prophet ﷺ, he told the Sahabi to run the camels and the sheep in front of one of the envoys. There were the sacrificial sheep and camels, to show them they're here on a peaceful mission. So again, this type of sort of these optics are perfectly acceptable. And again, we need to think about how best we can counter some of the negative propaganda against the Muslims in this day and age, and how do we, without distorting Islam, how do we give a more true reflection of what it is, and how do we get people to relate to that in a much better way? And again, this is about the styles and means that we do the da'wah. And so it's not, as I say, it's not changing Islam. It's just making it more accessible to the people, and countering this propaganda, countering the lies against the Muslims. Okay. And so they entered into the city with their swords in their scabbards, and the Prophet, he's at the helm. He's seated on his she-camel, al-Qaswa, and he's surrounded by all the companions. Obviously, they're attentively looking at him. What's he going to do? And they're taking their cues from him, and they're all saying, "Labayk Allahumma labayk. Here I am, at your service, O Allah." And the Quraish, as I say, they're completely out of sight. And some say that the Quraish, many of them were aligned on the top of Quraish Mount, little hilltop, where they're watching the Muslims. Again, they're just sort of tongue-tied at witnessing the strength and devotion of the Muslims, and it's really impactful on them. And as they entered into the precincts of the Haram, Abdullah bin Rawaha, he was walking before the Prophet ﷺ, reciting, "Get out of his way, you disbelievers, make way. We will fight you about its revelation with strokes that will remove heads from the shoulders and make friend unmindful of friend." So that's how they entered in triumph. And they know that they're being watched. So again, and again, this is after 6.5 years or so, 7 years, that they're entering into Mecca. Most of them, Uthman obviously came as an envoy, but the vast majority of them, this is the first time since they've been expelled, the few hundred Muhajirin that are allowed to come back to their home. And again, what mixed emotion must they have had? Strangers backed into their, coming back to their homeland, their own city. Nevertheless, so they perform the basic rites of the Umrah, the tawaf, the Sa'i, and then when they've done with that, then there's the sacrificial, is the sacrificing animals and shaving the heads of the menfolk, shave their their heads. So that's essentially, that, and there aren't that many reports of what happened during those 3 days. Obviously, it was very peaceful, and that's why we don't have any incidents, and that's why things aren't being reported. So they will have done their Umrah, they'll have done the sacrifices, they'll have camped there, they would have eaten and had feasts and enjoyed themselves. And again, the Qraish can do nothing but watch. So it's narrated that as they're sort of leaving on their way out, al-Abbass, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, he suggested that to the Prophet ﷺ that maybe he should marry Maymoona, okay, and Maymoona is going to be the last wife the Prophet ﷺ was going to marry. And she's the one who lives the longest. She's the one who outlives all the other wives. Now, Maymoona, she was married to someone called Abu Raham ibn Abdul Uzza. Then he passed away in Mecca, and she is now a widow in Mecca. So she doesn't have any support. So she's without any husband. She's a Muslim. She is the sister-in-law of al-Abbass. Now, al-Abbass's wife, Fadl, we've talked about, it's her younger sister. So Fadl's sister is Maymoona. So Maymoona, knowing that there are Muslims in town, she approaches, Maymoona approaches her sister Fadl and say, "Can you, find me a husband? All these Muslims around, find me a husband." So Fadl, she speaks to al-Abbass, and then he goes to the Prophet and thinks, well, maybe the Prophet would be a good match for her. So he approaches the Prophet and says, "I am the wali of Maymoona." So instantly you set the frame of context of the conversation, and then he goes, "I am the wali of Maymoona, and what do you think of her?" And again, when people say that, it's not what are the what do is a nice person, nothing good or bad. No, it's specifically a proposal, and that's the accepted wording. Al-Abbass, he's sort of praising Maymoona, her qualities, explaining the situation. Obviously, the Prophet knows much about this, and then in the end, the Prophet he agrees. And then Abbas is the wali who then arranges the ceremony, and it's narrated by Maymoona that the Prophet married her when he was out of ihram. So obviously, when they'd done all the Umrah and all the festivities and all the rituals, it was only after that they took the ihram off and they did the nikah. And this is probably towards the end of day 3 that they did the nikah. And around about this time, the Quraish they come up to the Prophet and say, "Look, your 3 days are up. We had an agreement. We would leave town. You would come, do your business, and then go." And the Prophet he then tries to discuss with them, try to extend the stay, extend the treaty, renegotiate the agreement. And he said, "Look, what if we stay a little bit longer? What harm is that going to do to you? Look, I've married. I want to be a married man. I've married from amongst you. Let me be a groom amongst you, and then tomorrow we can have a big feast, so you can come and enjoy the food." And then they basically say, "Look, this is not your land. Will you kindly leave?" And at that, Sa'd ibn Ubadah, he got really upset. He says, "Look, this is not your land. This is Allah's land, obviously." And the Prophet then calms Sa'd down, and then he says, "Look," he realizes that they're not gonna shift on this, and technically they are right. There was the 3 days, and he tried to renegotiate extend the treaty. It didn't work. If they had come, it would have been a really good PR opportunity. Have a big feast, have all the people come and interact with the Muslims, and it would have been a perfect dawah opportunity, where a lot of the barriers would have been broken down, and you can start to build the trust. And the Prophet ﷺ was thinking, well, if I do this, do my walima, have everyone around, it really helps break down the barriers, and it's a really positive dawah opportunity. But they didn't let them do that. The Qraish basically said, look, we don't need your food, the 3 days are 3 days, so off you go. So the Prophet obviously had to then pack up, and then left, and then they went back to a place called Sarif, which is outside of Mecca, and that's where the Prophet completed the rituals of the marriage, consummated the marriage, and he stayed there for a short while. And it said that many years later, and we said, Maymoona was the last of the wives of the Prophet to pass away. She passed away in 61 Hijri, and she passed away. She was on a journey going back, I think, to Mecca, and she stopped off at Sarif, and that's actually where she passed away. So that's where they buried her, and that's the story of Maymoona bint al-Harith. So again, just for completion's sake, just going through all the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, obviously the Khadija is the first one. Then Khadija passes away, the Prophet ﷺ marries Sauda, and then Aisha does the nikah in Mecca, then goes to Medina and marries Hafsa bint Umar, and then also Zainab bint Khuzaymah, but then she dies within a few months. So there's Sauda, Aisha and Hafsa. Then the Prophet ﷺ, after some time, marries Salama. After the battles, he marries Juwairiya and Zainab bint Jahsh, and again that was one that was ordained in the Qur'an. And then he marries the daughter of Abu Sufyan, Ramla, also known as Habiba. And again, and she was living in Abyssinia. Then we talked about Safiya bint Huyay, Maria the Copt, that was given as a gift after the letters, and this is finally Maymoona bint al-Harith. So I will quickly pause there for the adhan and carry on in a second, inshallah. Right, so quickly finish the last incident related to the Umrah is the story of Umara, the daughter of Humza, so Umara bint Humza. She's a young girl, about 6 or 7 years old. Humza was married to Umara's mother, obviously. She was known as Salma bint Umays. And then Salma bint Umays, she's the sister of another famous Sahabiyat, Asma bint Umays. Now, Salma and Asma, their mother was also the mother of Maymoona, whom the Prophet just married. So Salma bint Umays married Humza, and then she got left in Mecca for whatever reason. Humza went with the Prophet. He passed away in Uhud. Salma and their daughter Umara are in Mecca. Salma's sister Asma bint Umays and the other sister Maymoona are still, or Maymoona still in Mecca. So the Prophet ﷺ, he's married to Maymoona now, so it makes him technically the uncle of Umara. So as they're leaving, this young girl, Umara, she's running, towards the Muslims, and she's saying, oh my uncle, take me, don't leave me in Mecca. So although growing up in Mecca with all the negative propaganda about the Muslims, she obviously sees how the Muslims are, and whatever environment she's growing up in, she feels she will have a better upbringing in Medina, and she wants to go with the Prophet ﷺ, or go with the Muslims. So she escapes whatever situation she's in, whatever babysitting arrangements there are, and she's running behind the Muslims saying, take me, uncle, don't leave me here. So then when the Sahabi found out who it is, this is Umara bint Humza, they started the little argy-bargy of who has the privilege of looking after her. So Ali, he took Umara first and took her by the hand and gave her to Fatima, his wife, and said, "We will take care of her." And then some of the others found out about Zaid bin Harithah. He found out about it. He came to, look, the Prophet ﷺ made me and Humza brothers. And, when they first started off there. So Humza and I were brothers. So therefore, this is my niece. So I have so I will take care of her. Again, she's an orphan, so you think of the swab, but not just that. It's Humza's daughter, and so there's issue of prestige. And then Jafar ibn Abi Talib, he comes in and says, "Look, I am the older brother of Ali. Therefore, I'm the same rank as Ali, but my wife is her khala, her blood aunt, right? So Jafar is married to Asma bint Umays, Salma's sister. So Asma bint Umays, so she first married Jafar, and then Jafar's going to pass away in the Battle of Mu'tah soon, who's just come back from Abyssinia. Then Asma bint Umays, she marries Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, and then later on, when Abu Bakr as-Siddiq passes away, Asma bint Umays marries Ali ibn Abi Talib. Right? So again, you can see the level of these people. So that's Asma, and Asma is Salma's sister, and their daughter is Umara. So Jafar says, no, not only is Humza my uncle, my wife is her aunt. So they're disputing about taking care of this young girl and who's got the most right. So then the Prophet is asked to intervene. It's very sensitive, situation. Not just is the life of an upbringing of a girl at stake. There's obviously the Prophet knows all of these three. So the Prophet he sets the scene, tries to placate them all. Says to Ali, "You are from me, and I am from you." So again, saying, look, you and me, we're the same. We grew up together. Right, they grew up in the Prophet ﷺ, he looked after Ali when Ali was young, and Ali's grown up in the Prophet ﷺ's household. So you are from me, and I'm from you. So praising Ali. And then he turns to Zaid and says, "You are our brother and protector," Zaid bin Harithah. And he doesn't obviously mention the other things. Said, "Look, you are our brother and our protector." And everyone knows the high status of Zaid. He's mentioned by name in the Qur'an. And then he turns to Jafar and says, "You resemble me the most physically and in manners." Again, these two grew up together in Abu Talib's house. The Prophet and Jafar, they're maybe a decade apart in years, but they're sort of best buddies. They grew up together, and the Prophet had the strongest affinity to Jafar ibn Jafar ibn Abi Talib, and that's why he sent him as the emir for the group of Muslims in Abyssinia. And then he turns around and says that Jafar, she is yours because the khala, the mother's sister, is the same as the mother. Right? So the relationship that a khala would have is a really strong relationship, and therefore, many people derive some fiqh issues related to that. But then Umara, she's given to Umara bint Humza bin Abdul Muttalib is given to Jafar ibn Abi Talib to look after in their household. So that's that. Final points just about things that we can learn from the Umrah before concluding. That we can see that there's been a sea change in how things are. The Muslims now are in a far superior position. They have the upper hand. They know it. Psychologically, they have defeated the Quraish, and they are there, and they are really demonstrating their strength physically, spiritually, morally, and in numbers. Then the Prophet is trying to use different ways of doing dawah to win over the Quraish. He tries to renegotiate the treaty, which is perfectly acceptable. Although the treaty said this, if both parties to agree to something, they're allowed to do that. And we saw that with Abu Sufyan, who came back within a few months trying to renegotiate Hudaibiyyah by extending it or reaffirming Hudaibiyyah. So these things, they're allowed by the leaders if they want, but one side didn't agree, so they had to stick to the agreement. Again, the Prophet is using these ways to try and show what Islam is all about. So I'll finish it there, inshallah. Next time we'll talk about some of the military expeditions that have happened this year, and also the conversion of some of the great the last three great people to convert to Islam from the Quraish. There's Amr bin al-As, there's Khalid bin Walid ibn Mughira, and there's Uthman ibn Talha, and we'll talk about their stories inshallah next time. So I'll finish there. وَلَا سَرَيْنَا الْإِنسَانَ لَا فِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Jazakallah khair. Do remember us in your du'as and the ummah, and do take care inshallah. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.